Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Weinkoop. I'm a programming assistant here at the Theodore Roosevelt inaugural site. And first off, I would like to welcome everyone to the first speaker night of 2018. And I would like to thank you all for being here. Also, I would like to thank the sponsors of Speaker Night, M&T Bank, and also the New York State Council on the Arts, whose support allows us to record Speaker Night presentations and make them available on YouTube. So Speaker Night is usually on the fourth Tuesday of the month, and it provides us an opportunity to think about a variety of issues that have remained relevant for well over a century, and the ways that they shape and define our lives every day. Tonight, Lenora Henson will be discussing a definitive moment in local history with her talk titled "From All Corners of the Earth, Visitors to Buffalo's Pan-American Exposition." Lenora Henson joined the staff of the Theodore Roosevelt inaugural site as curator in 1999, although Director of Public Programming was added to her title a few years ago. In addition to providing oversight for the TR site's collection and implementing its Tuesday night at the site programming, she once consulted on the creation of a Theodore Roosevelt bobblehead. Lenora has served on the boards of several local and regional museum associations, including the Erie County Historical Federation, Museum-Wise, and the Museum Association of New York. She currently serves as a panelist for NYSCA's museum program, and after several years as the state-level representative for the American Association for State and Local History's Leadership in History Awards program, she recently took on the role of regional chairperson. She also teaches public history at Damon College. Lenora earned a bachelor's degree in history from SUNY Geneseo, as well as a master's degree from the University of New Hampshire. And now with her talk "From All Corners of the Earth, Visitors to Buffalo's Pan-American Exposition," Lenora Henson.
Thanks, Bill. It's kind of weird to be doing this, but usually I'm just introducing people. But I'm actually real excited to do this talk. I want to start with something of a confession, actually. As some of you may know, I'm not a native Buffalonian. I moved here, I'm a transplant. And here's the confession part. Before I applied for this job, I'd never heard of the Pan-American Exposition. They just didn't cover that down on Long Island where I went to school. So anyway, when I got to the TR site about 18 months before the 100th anniversary of the Pan Am's opening ceremony, I had a lot to learn. My crash course in Panamania went pretty well. After all, it really wasn't that hard to find out that the exposition took place on a 350-acre site in North Buffalo, which we can see here. Just by frame of reference, here's Delaware Avenue, here's Elmwood, and let's see, this is what is now the Buffalo History Museum, just to kind of orient everyone. The exposition took 7 months, or 20 months and $7 million to build. Found out we welcomed 8 million visitors to Buffalo during the Pan Am Exposition. It was open between May and November of 1901. It boasted buildings devoted to machinery, transportation, horticulture, agriculture, electricity, ethnology. The U.S. government had its own building. There was a New York State building, which is now the home of the Buffalo History Museum. There was a stadium with hosted lots of sporting events. There was a massive court of fountains. There was a canal system, and then there was a Temple of Music, which is probably now best known as the site of President McKinley's assassination. Up in this corner over here, we had a Midway, composed of about 30 acres. There were about 300 concessions, all sorts of pseudo-educational exhibits and amusements. All of that was pretty easy to figure out. I learned that the purposes of the Pan Am, the stated purposes, there were 3 of them. First, they wanted to display the progress made during the just finished 19th century. So these 2 guys here are working on a printing press, and it was the cutting edge technology at the time, and they wanted to show it off in the with the Pan Am. Secondly, the Pan Am was designed to promote cooperation and better relations, particularly trade relations, between the nations of the Western Hemisphere, which is exemplified by this logo, which basically anything that wasn't nailed down, they put this logo on. It was designed by a Lockport guy named Raphael Beck, which really confused me for a long time because there was Raphael Beck, B-E-C-K, who designed the Pan Am logo, and a lot of the notations in our records talked about Beck's, B-E-C-H-S, which was the Buffalo and Erie County Historical Society, and that took me a while to straighten that out. Anyway, I eventually got that down. But his logo, as you see, kind of North America is reaching down towards South America, extending the hand of friendship type of thing. Finally, the third and final purpose of the Pan Am, stated purpose, was to showcase the potential of electric power. Right here, near Niagara Falls was the perfect spot. So it showcased that power not only with displays like this one inside the Electricity Building, but also with the impossible to miss nighttime electrical display. So all of the major buildings were outlined with hundreds of thousands of light bulbs, creating this magnificent display. And there were a lot of descriptions of the illumination. Apparently it was kind of done gradually, which I can't quite picture, but I read numerous accounts of, the lights coming on so subtly almost, but then all of a sudden they were on, and it was quite striking. So this was, showcasing that electrical power was, you couldn't miss it, even if you didn't go to the Electricity Building. And well, that was all well and good. That was, Pan Am 101. I have to admit, there are a few things that took me a while to wrap my head around as I was learning about the Pan Am. Number one, it took me quite a while to kind of wrap my head around the idea that the vast majority of these buildings were designed to be temporary. I looked at these amazing pictures, all these wonderful pictures of this fair and these buildings that look just totally amazing, and the idea that they were designed to be destroyed kind of blew my mind. The second thing that took me a while to kind of wrap my head around, many of you probably are aware that Pan American, one of its nicknames was the Rainbow City. So all of these wonderful buildings that we see, have come down to us in wonderful black and white photos were actually vibrantly colored. There was a director of color, a guy by the name of C.Y. Turner, and he created, it's, this book of how the colors were going to work together, how the buildings were going to be done. So, I always look at these pictures and I try to imagine them, the buildings in full color that they would have been. So it was kind of, those were a couple things that took me a while. But having completed my, Pan Am 101 course, it was time to look a little bit deeper. And I was pretty excited to learn that the Pan American was officially opened by none other than Vice President Theodore Roosevelt. The official opening day was May 20th, 1901, and although President William McKinley wanted to be here, he couldn't make it, so our hero TR takes his place, and this is TR in the carriage there, coming down, I think it's Main Street, but I'm not 100% sure. And he opened the fair with these words: "Today I welcome you here. We wish you well, we wish you all prosperity, and we earnestly hope for your well-being." Which sounds great, and I was also interested to learn what other people had to say about the fair. So a few of my favorite comments. Leslie's Weekly, which was a popular magazine at the time, said that the Pan Am surpasses in certain large and most important features the international expositions at Philadelphia and Chicago. This was a time of all sorts of fairs. Philadelphia and Chicago had earlier fairs. So the Pan Am surpasses Philadelphia and Chicago. This fair eclipses in its beauty, its variety, and its comprehensiveness anything of its kind ever witnessed before in this hemisphere. Pretty cool, huh? Let's see. Everybody's Magazine said the Pan American is industrially too significant, educationally too important, and aesthetically too superb to be passed by. Nicholas Murray Butler, who is a noted educator, was quoted in Cosmopolitan magazine, and for any of you who are wondering, this is not the Cosmo that we know today that you find in the grocery store. It didn't look anything like that. But anyway, Nicholas Murray Butler said, Pan Am is education in the best sense. It is stimulus to fine feeling, to an appreciation of beauty and color and in form. It is food for many subsequent feelings of the same sort. And of course, who could forget President McKinley's famous President's Day address from September 5th, 1901. McKinley was a huge fan of expositions, and he said they were the timekeepers of progress. They record the world's advancement, they stimulate the energy, enterprise, and intellect of the people and quicken human genius. They go into the home, they broaden and brighten the daily life of people. They open mighty storehouses of information to the student. So, like pushing the aesthetics and also the educational value of Pan Am. And last but not least, in terms of these quotes, my personal favorite, back to Leslie's Weekly. Happy and fortunate is the man who can spend 3 days at the Exposition. If he spends his time rightly, it will be worth to him a year at college for the attainment of useful knowledge. Damn, if Pan American had been around, when I was going to school, I could have saved myself all sorts of time. So much to my dismay, I was not around for that kind of thing. So, all these quotes, all of this publicity about the fair said it was absolutely the best, which, go figure, of course it's going to say that. But I found myself wondering, what did the real people think of the Pan Am? Like, what did this kid over here think? What did this lady think? I wanted to know what the TripAdvisor, for today, what the feedback would have been. But how do you get at that question? It's not an easy answer. A lot of kind of the real folks, if you will, aren't likely to publish their thoughts. They often leave no trace, unless you have diaries, maybe, which we didn't have in our collection. So, and even so, a diary, one person, how do I find out what lots of people think? So, I was kind of like, really trying to struggle, how can I get at this question? And then I heard a rumor. I heard a rumor that BEX, Buffalo and Erie County Historical Society, now Buffalo History Museum, had guest registers in its collection. I was like, ooh, that sounds kind of neat. Existing guest registers from various buildings. So I decided I was going to go check those out. And I went over to BEX, and I should preface this by mentioning that since I did this research, they have a new librarian. But when I went over there, and I said, I really want to check out your guest registers, they said, the librarian at the time said to me, why do you want to do that? You're not going to find anything. It's going to be a waste of your time. So I said, just humor me. Just let me look at something. So the first guest registry pulled out was from this building, the women's building. And I opened it up, page 1. The first signature in the women's building guest register was Theodore Roosevelt. Because remember he was here opening the fair on May 20th? He signed in at the women's building. I said, I'm not going to find anything interesting in these guest registers, so I should just go home. But I said, no, I'm going to keep looking. So the women's guest register was pretty interesting for the Women's Administration Building. And it asked people, of course, to give their name, where they were from. Interestingly, it also asked people where they were staying locally. So that was kind of an interesting piece. For instance, Mrs. John H. Baird was visiting on June 28th from Toledo, Ohio, and she was staying locally at 125 Edward Street. I was able to then look at some of the guidebooks for the Pan Am and kind of do some cross-referencing, and discovered that 125 Edward Street was the address of St. Mary's Home, which had a capacity of 77 people who could stay there. It was for women only, so made sense. And the rates at the time were $1 and up. So, and it operated the European plan, which meant there were no meals included. If you were staying in a hotel with the American plan, you would have gotten 3 meals. So the dollar a day that Mrs. Baird was paying is, believe it or not, approximately $28 in 2018 dollars. But that was kind of interesting to, this one little name, I could kind of tease out several things. Some of the other folks, I discovered quite a few people who were staying at 260 Franklin. I'm not sure which way it is from here, quite honestly, but that was the Kellogg. Again, it had a capacity of 55 people, charged about $1 a day. I discovered Mary A. May Allen from Providence, Rhode Island, was staying at 945 West Ferry Street, which was run by Paul Voorhees, with a capacity of 375. So that was a bigger establishment. His price was $1 a day, same European plan. The prices were in this book that I was looking at were pretty consistent. So the women's building was kind of interesting. I saw, at the time I used to live over on Crescent when I first moved to the city, and I found someone who was lodging at the address that I lived at, which was kind of cool. It was like, huh, neat. So the women's building was kind of cool, but it wasn't really that exciting. So I persuaded the librarian, what else do you got? And luckily, she brought out the guest registers for the Ethnology Building. Paid her, okay? Now, just a little bit of background. The purpose of the Ethnology Building was to display quote, exhibits of great historical interest, relief maps of the Niagara frontier showing sites of the Indian village and the results of researches into the origin, affiliation, the customs, and institutions of wild and barbarian tribes still existing. So completely not politically correct, but it was what it was. Anyway, there were at least 4 large volumes of guest registers from this building. You can see it here closed. These are about 18 by 18 and then 2 inches thick. They have this wonderful leather binding and then a, kind of this like velvet corduroy thing going on in the middle. I mean, they're beautiful books. Each page has 30 lines per page. And let's see, at the top of each page, you'll see over here on the left page header, all visitors are requested to register once and once only. So they're trying not only to keep track of who, but how many people are visiting. Remember that's going to be important later on, by the way. But they ask for this column number. They're numbering the visitors. Then there's date, name, residence, where people are from. And over here, this last column was really my favorite column. The heading was remarks. Are you interested in anthropology? They had other folks who did completely what they wanted. Over here we have Douglas Graham from Chicago, Illinois, and Hayes Adams from Chesaning, Michigan. And their comment, can anybody read that? We're having a hot time. Okay, so again, cross-referencing this, I went into the census records. I wasn't Douglas Graham in Chicago. Trying to find which Douglas Graham in Chicago was a little bit tricky. Chesaning, Michigan, I don't know how big Chesaning, Michigan was in 1901, but I'm pretty darn sure I found Hayes Adams, and he would have been about 16 years old in 1901. Doesn't it sound like a 16-year-old's comment? So I got there were all sorts of different types of comments in the remarks column, and I've kind of tried to think of them, kind of group them thematically. And certainly there were people who seemed to agree with all those promotional, all that stuff, talking about how great the fair was. The Pan Am was, best thing since sliced bread, if you will. For example, on May 1st, Margarita Buckley from Buffalo said the fair was, quote, very beautiful. Captain R.H. Morrison from Chicago visited on May 8th, and he wrote, quote, surpasses the World's Fair in many respects. Now he's probably talking about the Chicago World's Fair, so here's a guy from Chicago visiting on May 8th and giving Buffalo the edge there. Mrs. Actually I believe this may be G.A. Wagaman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wrote better for one's eyes than the World's Fair. So the World's Fair, Chicago World's Fair was the white city. It photographed much better because it was all white, but she apparently felt the colors were better, that would be my guess. And I did, again, cross-referencing the 1900 census, found the George A. Wagaman family in Pittsburgh that consisted of George, who was a butcher, age 35, his wife, who was 34, and they had 4 children, Charles, Roy, Helen, and Effie. So you can kind of picture the family coming to Buffalo for the fair, which is pretty cool. Mary Perkins from Portland, Maine said it was worth coming, and according to the 1900 census, she was a single sales lady, age 32, came to Buffalo from Maine. Let's see, Mrs. J.F. Lippett, who was a Buffalonian, said the fair was out of sight. The Gemrys from Falls City, Nebraska said, quote, your buildings are exceedingly fine. W.L. Albee, Jr. from Buffalo said the tower, so he's talking about the electric tower here, is light of all. Will G. Armstrong from Belpre, Ohio, it's clear out of sight. He was, according to the 1900 census, a 19-year-old son who was also a student, and 19-year-old son who was in school and was his father was a cashier at National Bank. So just kind of a little bit of background there. George Wolfe from Niagara Falls said, quote, it is bully. So apparently Theodore was not the only one to use that turn of phrase. Fred Otley from Ithaca said it beats Chicago by far. Let's see, we had Philip Leary, who was a 25-year-old from, he's a 25-year-old, oh, I'd have to check that, from Ithaca, New York. He said it has Paris topped. Ernest Reams from Harrisburg said it was elegant. Mabel Holly from Camden, New York, can't describe the beautiful sight. Francis Lee Purdy from Indianapolis said it was perfect. Clarence C. Norris from Pittsburgh said it was heavenly. George Emsch from Woodville, Ohio said it was, quote, hot stuff. And I was able to find him in the census. In 1900, he was a 20-year-old farm laborer who was the son of 2 German immigrants. He had 2 brothers and a sister, so I don't know if the whole family came, but he thought it was hot stuff. Nina Clarkson was lost in admiration. So, those are just a few of the folks who seem to feel that the fair was all of that. But as we all know, you can't please everyone, and you can't, all the time. So, there were some folks who weren't terribly pleased with the fair. On May 1st, May 1st was the same day Margarita Buckley visited and said it was very beautiful. May 1st, David Boyle visited from the Education Department in Toronto, Ontario. And according to him, and I quote, many people have suffered death for less heinous crimes than planning such a building as this. So apparently he wasn't real pleased with the Ethnology Building. I'm not sure exactly why. Architecture, content, who knows. Same day, Luigi Mornia visited and said this fair is a fake. On May 3rd, A.C. Blanchard from Montpelier, Vermont wrote, we are here, but you are not ready. A.C. Blanchard was, according to the 1900 census, by the way, was a 42-year-old manager of a beef company. And I have to say that Mr. Blanchard had a point there. He said, we're here, but you're not ready. Remember I said the official opening that TR did was on May 20th? Well, the fair was supposed to open on May 1st, but there have been a couple hiccups in the construction. There were some weather issues. It's Buffalo after all. And so they actually postponed the official opening from May 1st to May 20th, which is when TR was here. So this photo, I was actually really happy to find it in our collection. This photo was taken on May 4th. So one day after AC Blanchard says, we're here, but you're not ready. And does this look ready to? No, they are still desperately working on, everything around the fair. So, some of those early visitors definitely had a point. As late as May 25th, W.J. Reed from Toronto was saying this fair is rotten. May 29th, H.G. Graham from Denver, Colorado said no good at present. The same day, O.G. Specker from Philadelphia said maybe better in about 2 months. H.C. Davis was disappointed from Newark, New Jersey. June 6th, G.G. Wilson said he or she didn't think the Pan is ready for visitors yet. On the same day, a whole group of folks from Chicago, Illinois left very poor in their comments. So, we had the people who loved it and the people who hated it. I guess you're going to get that either way. But it was interesting to see that playing out in the remarks columns. Now, what about all those lights I talked about and the rainbow colors? I was curious to see if that would show up, any of that would show up in the comments. And it did. For example, on August 24th, W.H. Geary from Springfield, Massachusetts visited, and he said the electric display is excellent. Again, not sure if he's talking about the building or the nighttime display, but comment on it. On August 30th, A.H. Gardner from Cleveland said the illumination, fine. The Willis, R.L. Willis and his wife, I think her name was Willina, sometimes it's hard to read people's writing, wrote, they were from St. Louis, Missouri. They said beautiful in daytime, more so at night. His wife looked gorgeous at night. So, again, because we're in the Ethnology Building, it's kind of catch or catch can whether people are going to comment on that building or other things, but it did show up every so often. As far as the color scheme, Mrs. Clark Morseman Steen from Sackett's Harbor, New York, said design and colors are magnificent. Bertha M. Flynn from Fairmont, Illinois said exquisite coloring. So again, it shows up every so often. Now I mentioned that there were some problems getting the fair, building the fair. There was I think there was an April snowstorm that dumped 7 or 8 inches or something and brought everything to a grinding halt. That was followed by the wettest May that Buffalo had had in 7 years. And it followed by the coldest June in 30 years. So there are some weather issues, and that shows up in the guest register as well. On May 9th, Ida M. Rice shows up from Los Angeles, California. And I can practically picture her stamping her foot as she writes, damp, bad day, mad. H.Y. Wetheny from Elgin, Illinois wrote that it was cold and windy day on May 13th. A. Appleton from Hamilton wrote very cold weather. T.S. Priestman from St. Thomas, Ontario on May 24th writes very cold weather, writes winter. Same day, Walter Fairbush from Buffalo. Okay, so he's a native. He writes weather too cold. The next day, May 25th, Mr. and Mrs. S.F. Cole were visiting from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and their comment is 8 degrees below zero. I haven't been able to verify whether they were, this was a little bit of hyperbole or what, but apparently even the Minnesotans thought it was a little bit chilly. May 25th, H.A. Calvert from Tuscola, Illinois writes, and it snowed. May 30th, C.B. McCormack from Lansing, Michigan, having a glorious time, but still raining at 6:30 p.m. And another thing that sometimes you saw was almost like conversations within the book, like somebody will write something and somebody would respond to it, which is kind of neat. So McCormack writes, still raining at 6:30 p.m. Somebody else writes, cheer up, kind of, that's okay. G.R. Dougherty from Baldwinsville, New York, wish for pleasant weather. May 30th, W.H. Weirman from Orsi, California, wish I had some California sunshine. June 8th, Elias Grosner from Worcester, Mass. writes frozen stiff. So, into June, we're getting freezing comments. Fast forward to June 22nd, Ava Blancy from Buffalo writes very warm today. Same day, Gertrude Griner from Peoria, Illinois, awfully hot. William A. Connor from Lowell, Mass. swelteringly hot. Fred Kinney from Watertown, New York, damnable hot. June 22nd, same day, June 22nd, Nellie Kelson from Montreal, oh, for a drink. I'm not sure, what kind of drink she wanted. But, it's interesting to kind of see it play out in the guest registers. Another thing that I could kind of see in the guest registers was people kind of would, leave comments almost on their state of mind. Up here at the top, we have Mrs. S.A. Turner, 678 Fulton Street, City, I'm not sure. And she writes, she's too tired to know whether she likes ethnology or not. Other folks, May 23rd, M&H McClellan, write they're very tired. C. Hopkins from Buffalo, fresh as a daisy. Augustus Runchy from St. Thomas, Ontario, writes very weary and footsore. And then Emma kind of has a arrow pointing up to that comment and dems my sentiments. Francis E. Succi from Brooklyn wrote in those comments section, it made me tired. Another group of comments up here we have, I believe F. Ritzenwaller and wife from Batavia. They say they're broke, so apparently they spent too much money, maybe on the Midway or something. T.H. Bond down here from Detroit, very near broke. C.O. Lawler, I believe, all broke. Leora Nickerson from Elk River, Minnesota, she writes she's far from home. So you get kind of an interesting array of comments. One of my favorites, August 8th, R.A. Lewis visits from New Madrid, Missouri. His comments, quote, looking for pretty girls but can't find them. So people come to the fair for all sorts of reasons. You never know why people are going to come to the fair. Another thing that you could see sometimes were people's travel plans. For instance, on June 14th, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Hutchinson from New York City, they wrote, we have eloped, which I thought was kind of fun. George W. Bilbo from Creston, Iowa, said that en route to England, so must have stopped on his way. J.S. Kelso from Waterford, New York, noted that he or she would be going home tomorrow. Poor Mary Louise Richardson from Ashtabula, Ohio, her comment was stranded. Joseph Nelson Brown from Hamilton, New Jersey, wrote that he was here for 3 days. And I love this, the next line, Mrs. W.B. Shaw from Washington, D.C., not to be outdone, says here for 6 days. People get a little competitive. So there was a lot of different things that I was kind of scanning these for. Again, this is very anecdotal. I didn't, this isn't by no means an exhaustive study of those books. But what I liked to do a lot of time, let's go back to this one, is kind of scan, this column here, where people were from. Just kind of an interesting exercise. And there were a lot of towns that kind of stood out to me because I've been there or meant something to me. For example, N.E. Perkins, visitor from Biddeford, Maine, which I've spent some time there. My college roommate was from Baldwinsville, New York, and G.R. Dougherty was from there. I noticed Jenny Ho visited from Sayville, which is a couple towns over from where I grew up on Long Island. A bunch of people from Patchogue, where I grew up. The Foster family from Dover, New Hampshire, where I lived before I moved to Buffalo, they visited. So it was interesting to see where people were coming from. Alice Booth from Geneseo, where I went to school. And then every so often you'd see something that just kind of, you never knew what was going to stand out, but one guy caught my eye, Major Thomas F. Davis, who was from Nashville, New Hampshire, and in his remarks he wrote, "Veteran, Mexican War at City of Mexico in 47, pioneer to California, overland to Sacramento, 49. And then he's in Buffalo for the fair in 1901. And I don't know, I was just like, that's amazing what this guy has seen and done. So I like to kind of ponder that a little bit. What I did recently was I did this little map of places that came up from visitors. So obviously the most are, centered in the U.S., but you'll notice there were international visitors from Argentina, from Chile, from Australia, from Japan, Russia, Norway, Germany, France. It was really pretty amazing, just this kind of random sample. And I want to end with my absolute favorite story, such as it is. As I mentioned, I liked to scan the columns for where people were from. Anyone read that by chance? I know this isn't the best. Honolulu. Yep. So I was scanning this column and I said, Honolulu, good grief, what kind of trip must that have been to get to Buffalo from Honolulu? And I just kind of pondered in amazement that for a bit. So this is H.M. Wells, who signs in on August 5th. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Kind of pause, wow, boat, train, who knows how we got here, but that's an amazing trip. So after pondering that for a few seconds, I kept scanning. And lo and behold, in that residence column, another Honolulu. And I'm like, wow, it's a plain old Honolulu. It must have been like a field trip. And then I realized, wait, it's the next day, and H.M. Wells has signed in again. Remember, you were only supposed to sign in once and only once? So H.M. Wells did not play by the rules. But then I looked over in the comment column, and he first signs in on the 5th, and he signs in on the 6th, and he's written a note in that remarks column. As near as I can tell, it said, Minda, meet me at New England Building, Wednesday, 12. Answer here, and there's a blank line. And that's in a different color pencil. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. He must have made a little love connection, how nice. So I kind of keep on, don't think too much of it, kind of keep on going. What do you know, somebody else wanted a little, oh no, it's still H.M. Wells. So here he's, Minda, a couple exclamation points. Meet me at the New England Building at 3 p.m. today, Wednesday, same place at 12. I'm like, So, I mean, as near as I could figure, he must have met this chick, maybe at the Ethnology Building. I think her name was Minda, and obviously he's trying to get her attention and hoping maybe she'll see her, this, And I was like, wow, okay. I'll keep on scanning. So he signed in twice on the 6th. This time it's either the 6th or 7th, it's a little bit unclear. H.M. Wells from Honolulu. This time he doesn't even bother putting her name because he knows that she's going to know it's for her, the message is for her. And he says this time, New England Building, Wednesday, 3. Then he writes Seneca House, Seneca Street, which must be where he's staying locally, which to me starts to smack, he's getting a little bit desperate. Because no self-respecting woman that he wants to, get together with is going to present herself at the Seneca House, but maybe I guess she could send a message or something, I don't know. But so he signs in on the 6th or 7th. Is this the one? Let's see. Yes, okay. So keep scanning. August 7th, 8 p.m. He's now time stamping his entries. H.M. Wells signs in again from Honolulu. 12, Thursday, be at New England Building, Seneca House, Seneca Street. At this point, I was just kind of like, okay. And so I kept reading. And this is the last time we actually, hear from poor H.M. Wells. Seneca Hotel, Seneca Street, leave, is it Friday night for Honolulu. So, you know, I guess depending on whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person, you know, you can choose to believe that Minda finally got the message and they, you know, and got word to him and they ultimately lived happily ever after. You know, I have to admit that for a while I had this great vision of H.M. Wells as some kind of pineapple plantation owner guy, you know. I really, really want to go and research this as best I possibly can. You know, I think there's a lot of research that could be done on site in Honolulu to get the end of this story. So my boss is right over there if you want to, you know, put in good word for that. That said, I have tried to figure out who H.M. Wells is. I've looked in census records. Again, with H.M. and Honolulu, it's not terribly easy to find him. I suspect he may have been H.M. Wells, who was a school principal and teacher at some of the mission schools in Hawaii. I was able to find a ship manifest that listed him leaving Hawaii in early July, listed and H.M. Wells leaving Honolulu in early July and heading to Vancouver. So that could be him. I'm not really sure. I still like to think of the pineapple planter story, but I love this guy, and he's, you know, he's signed in, what, 8 times? You know, desperately looking for poor Minda. I don't know, I hope they worked it out. But fun stories you can find in the guest registers.